Dobi dobi dap dap, dobi dobi dap dap.
Good day everyone, we are Group 1 here to discuss 8 theories of globalization. So here are the learning objectives. First one is to provide a thorough, insightful introduction to the idea of globalization. Second one is to give a thorough explanation of the key concepts such as capitalism, governance, culture, and history that serve as a factor behind globalization. Third one is present the theories in globalization. And the last one is to be able to distinguish the 8 theories.
Good day, sir. I am Cadet Tej Baronswaring, and I am here to discuss the central themes of globalization, which is the economic globalization, political globalization, financial globalization, and lastly, the cultural globalization. First is the economic globalization. So, the economic globalization is a process of economic and trade activities which countries around the world. In general, globalization decreases the cost of manufacturing. This means that companies can offer goods at a lower price to consumers. It's the growing global integration not only markets but also of finance, commerce, communication, technology, and a law that bypass traditional national, cultural, ethnic, and social boundaries. The second is the political globalization. Political globalization is one of the key goals of political globalization is to create a better trade routes around the world. The development and the growing influences of international organizations such as US and World Health Organization means governmental action takes place at international level. The third one is the financial globalization. The financial globalization there are characteristics of financial globalization called the financial openness. That is the important characteristic of financial globalization. By the magnitude of international flows of capital is the basic reflex. The foreign currencies, the stocks, and the bonds and other financial instruments are moving around the world like never before. The fourth one is the cultural globalization. Let me give you an example about the cultural globalization. Good example for that is the trading of commodities such as coffees and or avocado. Coffee is originally from Ethiopia and consumed in the Arabic region. So, nonetheless, due to commercial trade, after the 11th century, it is now known as a globally consumed commodity. Not only the coffee, also the cigarettes, and there are lots of more. And cultural organization, it is also the process through which the values, ideas, and experiences of a specific culture are transmitted and disseminated around the world.
So, good day everyone. So, social globalization. So, this refers to integration of societies and refers to the dissemination of information and ideas via and between international borders. So, the internet and the social media are the center of this in today's world. So, internationally well known as the movies, literature, and TV shows could serve good instances of social globalization. So next is technical globalization. So this refers to the spread of technology around the world. So the faster spread of the technology throughout the world economy and is known as technological globalization. So as we all know, the transfer of technologies between the industrialized and developing countries in particular and across entire planet. So next is geographical globalization. So to the idea of the world is no longer seen as the distinct nations as such much as it was once it was. So this describes as the collection of procedures or economic and social or cultural, technological and institutional that affect the societies and people to interact one another globally. So exchanges of the flows between various regions of the world are emphasized through a progressive process. So lastly, ecological globalization. To the idea that the world is not needs to be considered as one as interconnected ecosystem. So the problem with the environment on a global scale, such as population of growth, access to food, a decline of biodiversity on a global scale, that wealth disparity. So that's all. Thank you.
The 8 theories of globalization. 1. Theory of liberalism. 2. Theory of political realism. 3. Theory of Marxist. 4. Theory of constructivism. 5. Theory of postmodernism. 6. Theory of feminism. 7. Theory of transformationalism. And 8. Theory of eclecticism.
Theory of liberalism. It is a result of natural human desire for economic welfare and political liberty. So it is a political doctrine that takes protecting and enhancing the freedom of the individual to be the central problem of politics. Liberalism says the process of globalization as a market-led extension of modernization. As such, transplanetary connectivity is derived from human drives to maximize material well-being and to exercise basic freedoms. These forces eventually interlink humanity across the planet. First is the technological advances. So it is particularly in the areas of transport, communication, and information processing. With the evolution of the communication and transportation technologies during the later decades of 20th century, came an increased level of independence between sovereign states. It has only increased the importance of understanding the components of liberalism. So the second is the suitable legal and institutional arrangement. So it is to enable markets and liberal democracy to spread on a trans-world scale. So the political concept holds that the state is not just subject to external authority or other states, nor is it subject to the internal authorities such as military. So liberalism posits the international law organization and non-governmental organizations are equally important factors in the world politics, while rejecting the realist theory that international relations are a zero-sum game.
Good day everyone, especially to you Sir Ardenas. My name is Decadet Alcazar Allen Dave S, and today I'm going to show you or report to you about the theory of political realism. According to Julian Karpowicz, realism, also known as political realism, is a view of international politics that stresses its competitive and conflictual side. Like, it consider the principal actors in the international arena to be states, and also it considered with their own security, act in pursuit of their own national interests and struggle for power. So that is according to Julian Karpowicz. Like, political realism is concerned with their own security and act on their own national interests. Like they're trying to strengthen their security in their states, like, and how they will be working on other countries as well, like how they will other countries interest them, and that's how they're very struggle for power. Then theory of political realism, it's talk about that advocates the, like as I said earlier, that it advocates the state power, the pursuit of national interest, and the conflict between states. So political realism is the theory is all about like how countries work each other, but how became conflict between states because of like the how each other pursuit of their national interest, like how they will conquer it, how will they gain power, how will they become stronger of other states. So that is theory of political realism. Then another saying is that states are inherently acquisitive and self-serving and heading for inevitable competition of power, and some of the scholars stands for balance of power, where many attempt by one state to achieve world dominance is countered by collective resistance from other states. So like power theories neglect the importance and role of other actors in generating globalization, but it affects the globalization also. Like there are sub-states, authorities, macro-regional institutions, global agencies, and private sector bodies. Additional types of power relations on the lines of class, culture, and gender also affect the course of globalization, like culture because of the politics. Many gender or culture has affect, and it can be affect also the course of the globalization, because politics can very big like significance to part of the globalization also. So that's it. Thank you.
So, hello everyone, I am Cadet Mark Lloyd Ivano, and today I will discuss to all of you the theory of Marxism. So first, what is Marxism? So, Marxism is a theory based on the ideas of the philosopher Karl Marx. Marxism is a social, political, and economic philosophy. It is mostly the battle between the working class and the ownership class. It favors communism and socialism over capitalism. It is also what is known as a conflict theory, because it states that the society is in conflict with each another. Marxism is concerned with modes of production, social exploitation through a just distribution, and social emancipation through the transcendence of capitalism. Marxism lays out the theory of class and struggles and revolution. It inspects the effect of capitalism on labor productivity and economic development, and argues for a worker revolution to overturn capitalism in favor of communism. It hypothesizes the struggle between social classes, specifically between the rich and the poor, defines economic relations in capitalist economy, and will inevitably lead to revolutionary communism. Marx's class theory portrays capitalism as one step in a historical progression of economic systems that follows one another in natural sequence by vast and personal forces of history that happen due to the behavior and conflict among social classes. According to Marx, every society is divided into social classes whose members have more in common with one another than with members of social classes. So basically, Marxism is a liberation and leveler of a way to create a fair society.
The theory of constructivism. Globalization has also risen because of the way that people have mentally constructed a social world with particular symbols, language, and images. The constructivist focuses and observes on how social actors build their environment. So these social actors refers to any person who undertakes social action. So they observe both internally and the interaction with others. So conversion and symbolic exchange. This is just basically communication, and this would lead people to construct ideas, rules, and the ways of belonging to the world. Jean William Fritz Piaget was a Swiss psychologist known for his work on child development. Jean Piaget called this system of knowledge schema. A schema means a cognitive framework. It helps a person organize and interpret information. According to Jean Piaget, the three mechanisms used are: first is the assimilation. It refers to fitting a new experience into an existing mental structure. An example of assimilation is when a child encounters a dog, they might assimilate this information and would call any four-legged animal as dogs. Assimilation occurs when we modify or change new information to fit into our schemas. An example of accommodation is when a child who understands that a four-legged creature is called a dog, then the child encounters a cat and refers to it as a dog until corrected by a parent. After being corrected, the child can distinguish between a dog and a cat, and the child would refer the four-legged creature as a cat. Accommodation is the process of changing cognitive structures in order to accept something from the environment, and this would create a schema or a new information to what the child knew. Let's move on to the last one, which is the equilibrium. This means seeking cognitive stability through assimilation and accommodation. Piaget called this framework schema. As children progress through the stages of development, their schemas get clarified. An example of this is when a child recognizes some of the features of the animal. So if a child sees a cow in a far distance, since a cow looks like a dog, the dog schema will activate and the child would say, "It's a dog." He would recognize this as a dog, since he knew the name of the dog, the details, and how the dog would look like. So equilibrium occurs when a child's schemas can deal with the most new information through assimilation. So to sum it up, Jean Piaget's theory applies a lot in the adaptation and the intellectual development of humans.
Theory of postmodernism. Jean-Francois Lyotard famously defines the postmodern as incredulity towards meta-narratives, where meta-narratives are understood as totalizing stories about history and the goals of human race that ground and legitimize knowledges and cultural practices. Some other ideational perspectives of globalization highlight the significance of structural power in the construction of identities, norms, and knowledge. They all are grouped under the label of postmodernism. Michael Foucault, however, strives to understand society in terms of knowledge, power. Power structures shape knowledge. Certain knowledge structures support certain power hierarchies. The reigning structures of understanding determines what can and cannot be done. Knowing that in a given socio-historical context, this dominant structure of knowledge in modern society is called rationalism. So puts emphasis on the empirical world. Rationalism, the subordination of nature to human control, objectivist science, and instrumentalist efficiency. So modern rationalism produces a society overwhelmed with economic growth, technological control, bureaucratic organization, and disciplining desires. Postmodernism, like Marxism, helps to go beyond the relatively superficial accounts of liberalist and political realist theories and expose social conditions that have favored globalization. So obviously, postmodernism suffers from its own methodological idealism. All material forces, though, come under impact of ideas, cannot be reduced to modes of consciousness for a valid explanation, interconnection between ideational and material forces is not enough.
Theory of feminism. This is often focused on analyzing gender inequality, which has been created by Mary Wollstonecraft. Mary Wollstonecraft created a code which is said that strengthened the female mind by enlarging it, and there will be an end to blind obedience. Which she is showing that she is a supporter of the female species as a whole in the hopes that women will depart from their path of unquestioning obedience and carve out a life for themselves. The primary focus of Wollstonecraft's literary career was to envision and propose a social and political order in which women were treated as rational, autonomous being capable of independence and virtue. It means that Wollstonecraft's purpose is to create an order in which women must be treated equal or balanced. Women must have their own freedom or to live on their own, so women can be independent on their own. For that reason, many feminists considered Mary Wollstonecraft to be a foundational figure in feminist thought, which means that Wollstonecraft has been the model of feminism. It put emphasis on social construction of masculinity and femininity. All other theories have identified the dynamics behind the rise of transplanetary and supra-territorial connectivity in technology, state, capital, identity, and the like. It means that it will start to that people will recognize their own selves. Biological sex is held to mold the overall social order and shape significantly the course of history, presently globality. Their main concern lies behind the status of women, particularly their structure, subordination to men. Women have tended to be marginalized, silenced, and violated in global communication. This means that women have been discriminated because other people think that women cannot do what men does. They think that women must only stay at home and do the chores while men do the work outside the house.
Flow of culture in a two-way exchange in which Western culture is also influenced, exchanged, and enriched by culture in the developing world. In other words, two-way exchange of Western culture between Eastern culture between Eastern culture. The best example is K-pop. K-pop is worldly known, but at the same time it is a product of transformationalism. Korean traditional music came from Korean and United States pop culture. By exchanging of cultures from Western and Eastern, K-pop was created. Given this interconnectedness, globalization may be defined as a process or set of processes which embodies a transformation in the spatial organization of social relations and transactions, expressed in transcontinental or interregional flows and networks of activity, interaction, and power. By the use of globalization, interconnectedness between different nations are enabling to create a connection of social relations, transactions through social media, thus creating transcontinental transaction. The hyperglobalists purposely argue that contemporary globalization defines a new era in which people everywhere are increasingly subject to the discipline of the global marketplace. So, the hyperglobalist sees globalization as an allowable process, a new age in human history, in which countries' economies become interdependent, meaning different nations are depending on each other by improving each of their economic income, trade, and financial income. The skeptics, such as Hearst and Thompson 1996, offensively argue that globalization is a myth, which conceals that the reality of international economy increasingly segmented into three major regional blocks, in which national governments remain very powerful. Hearst and Thompson was able to say that globalization is a myth Because when we define globalization, it is interdependence of economies throughout the world, right? Because globalization is interdependence of economies throughout the world, but what is really happening is those powerful nations are the ones who are still being on the top. That is why Hearst and Thompson was able to say that globalization is just a myth, because they believe that the interconnectedness of every state's mix are still adapting to the profound changes happening. Rosenio 1997 or Giddens 1990 are transformationalists. They believe that the world are unstable state because of sudden changes happening, and that the people are still adapting. Macro present a rather complicated typology of globalization based on globalization's spread, depth, speed, and impact. The politics of globalization have been transformed using their word from the definition of globalization along of these dimensions because of the emergence of a new system of political globalizations. The politics of globalization is equivalent to political globalization for Held and McGrew. For them, there is no difference between the two, and the two of them are just the same. Bay and Michael criticized them. Held and McGrew's view on politics of globalization as the same as political globalization.
Good day, this is Cadet Amaris Ensu, and now we'll be talking about the theory of criticism by John R. Schultz. So, without further ado, let's start. Accordingly to the capitalists' attempt to amass ever greater resources in excess of their survival needs, accumulation of surplus, the capitalist economy is truly monetized money percentage accumulation. It offers abundant opportunities to transfer surplus, especially from the weak to the powerful. This mode of production involves perpetual and pervasive contest over the distribution of surplus. Such competition occurs both between the individual firms and along structural lines of class, gender, race, and etc. So the theory that John R. Schultz created is a theory that shows the struggle of identity and knowledge, construction nationalism, and cultural imperialism, and the subordination of women. So, synthesize them as forces of production, governance, identity, and knowledge. So, John R. Schultz synthesizes them, meaning he combined all of these to form a new theory or new system. So, what is the theory of eclecticism? The theory of eclecticism is a conceptual approach that does not rigidly to a single paradigm or set of assumption, but instead draws upon multiple theories, styles, or ideas to gain complementary insights into a subject or applies different theories and particular cases. So, that is the theory of eclecticism all about. Now, we will be going more or exploring more. Any mode of production cannot operate in the absence of enabling regulatory apparatus. There are some kind of governance mechanism. Governance relates process whereby people formulate, implement, enforce, and review rules to guide the common affairs. So, it's already dictated in there. But what Schultz saw in this theory is Schultz is aware of the insecurity, inequality, and marginalization caused by the present process of globalization. That's why this theory was created. Thank you and keep safe, everyone.